Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to our weekly recap video. I always love to start recap videos with winners of giveaways. I think we should just do a giveaway every week so I can start a recap this way. But 2 weeks ago we put up a video where we installed 5 new HoseLink retractable hoses on our new property, and in that video we did a giveaway. So we are giving away 4. We picked 2 winners from Facebook and 2 winners from YouTube, and those winners are Jacqueline Brown, Joanne Deeks, Carrie Sherman, and Mary Jo Blackmer. Congratulations to the 4 of you guys. Now, HoseLink is also giving 2 away. You had to follow their link and do their prompts. We were unable to get the names that they drew as winners just because our time difference is really weird. They're based in Australia, and I think it's like 3 a.m. their time right now. So anyway, we will update the description of this video with those winners' names as soon as we know who they are. Anyway, so let's just get into the videos from last week's. In these recap videos, in case you're new to them, we take all of last week's projects, all of last week's videos, and gather up a bunch of questions, oftentimes the most asked questions, and then try to address them all at one time. So, oh, hi Russell. Oh, where'd he come from?
He was up on the floor.
Oh my goodness, that scared me. He's like, ooh, she has a pillow on her lap. That looks comfy. It's actually a fairly decent morning out here. It's supposed to get close to 100, but it's pretty cool. Like, I can tell there's a shift. There's a shift, except for we're supposed to have like a 10-degree drop in temp from today to tomorrow, which means we'll have a really big windstorm tonight. Anyway, on a positive note, first video was planting some hibiscus for a friend. So we went over to one of our friends' homes, planted 5 of the Summerific Holy Grail hibiscus, which typically when they're put in full sun, which is what they like, they have really dark, almost black leaves. We've been keeping them in our high tunnel just to keep them safe from our extreme heat and wind. And so the leaves were a little bit more green in that video, but the flowers, I mean, they're massive. I think like 8 or 9 inches in diameter and a really deep red. And it was a fun video to go over there. Their son got in on the action. Caleb is like a huge gardener and he wanted to come help. And so he was helping dig holes. It was really fun. Anyway, Wendy said, was there a reason why you use plant tone instead of biotone? The only reason was because I was currently at that moment out of biotone. It was on its way to us. We were having some shipped, but it hadn't arrived yet. And honestly, all of the tone fertilizers are really good. And if you cannot get your hands on biotone, use whatever tone is appropriate for what you're planting. So holly tone, plant tone, garden tone, flower tone, all of those are really, really good fertilizers. The biotone I especially like for starting new things, and that's why I always use it in planting videos, because it's specifically formulated to like establish a root system really, really quickly. And we've done a whole video just about biotone fertilizer. We'll link that down below if you want to know more information. Kimberly said, what about the dwarf version? Any care tips? I may have just bought one. The card says sun, part shade. That can't be right, could it? Yes, they want sun. So they can take anywhere, if it says part sun to full sun, typically that means part sun is 4 to 6 hours of sun and full sun is 6 to 8+ hours of sun. So as long as it's getting a really good amount of sun, they should be fine, but that is what they prefer. Amanda said, thank you for sharing. I planted 2 hibiscus plants last year. The leaves are a little on the yellow side. The blooms only last 1 day and only but knee high. Is this normal? Well, it depends on the variety. I would say if you're dealing with some yellow leaves, especially if they're toward the bottom of the plant, it might mean the plant's getting too much water. That's typically the first thing I'll look for. The second thing I'll look for is if you're dealing with some chlorosis, but that's usually an all over issue. Like you'll notice it on the entire plant. It'll have kind of a yellow cast. You'll notice in the leaves that the veins of the leaves stay a darker color while the rest of the leaf tissue turns a yellow color. So like rule out a water issue first, which you typically see like toward the bottom of the plant and they'll start dropping the leaves, and then the chlorosis problem next. Depending on the variety, I mean, it might just be a variety that stays pretty small, or it might just be having an issue getting established. So be patient with it. If it's one that wants to get bigger, it just may need some more time. Joanne said, would those do well on a slope that gets full sun from 1 p.m. to sunset? Yes, they would. That'd be a great choice. Desiree said, is there a difference in hibiscus varieties? Are these hibiscus invasive like Rosa Sharon? They're not invasive as far as I know, and honestly, like Rosa Sharons are not invasive here in our area. I'm sure they are somewhere. But the difference between the type of hibiscus I showed you in this video with the great big tropical type blooms and Rosa Sharon hibiscus, which have the smaller blooms, is that the one that I planted in this video, they come, like you cut them back to the ground every year and they come back fresh like any other perennial. And then your Rosa Sharon hibiscus are a woody shrub. So they have very, very different growth habits, different leaf structure, different size bloom. Both are beautiful. Marlania said, do you cut these back in the wintertime? So typically, I think the recommended treatment for these is to wait until spring, like really early spring, to cut them back, because if you cut them back too short, it can open up the crown of the plant to possible freezing. So if you want to cut them back in the fall, which is what I do, oftentimes I do a lot of my cleanup in the fall, which is not the recommend, like professionals will say wait until early spring just to eliminate any possible winter damage, but I just don't have as much time in the spring. Fall is better for us. So what you want to do is, if you are cleaning them up in the fall, you want to make sure to leave a good sized branch, like a 6-inch at least piece of that stem up above the soil level, so that if any water enters in through the stem, like where you cut it, it can't really reach down to the crown and freeze. So it kind of leaves a little bit of a layer of protection. You can also mulch up over the crown of the plant if you want, but I find that they're very, very hardy. They're very tough here. They do really well. Okay, so the next video was designing our new land. So in that video, Erin and I went out into the new property. It was 100 degrees. It was so hot that day. And we started staking out where we wanted things. Erin had previously staked things out, but it wasn't exact. So we went out and we remeasured everything, staked it out, and we figured out that I was dreaming way too big. I was making everything in that space, I was thinking it could be bigger than it actually can be. It was so good to go out there and just kind of figure that out, like be in the space, walk the space, and really scrutinize our decisions. Got to do that, especially before you start putting in permanent stuff. That's the whole reason, is that we're getting ready to start putting in our permanent cut flower garden. And so you kind of need to know, for like the bigger things, the fences and trees and stuff like that, you want to put them in the right spots. So I ended up coming inside, retooling our whole design. In fact, this is what I use. This is Erin's iPad. It has like this little pencil thing, Apple Pencil. And we just used the markup feature in photos, right? Super not professional, but I just did like a little color sketch just to give you a different idea or a different view of our vision for the land. So anyway, Sage said, great ideas for this new land. Will you be moving the estate planters to the new entry point? Eventually. I mean, where we have them now is no longer our actual entrance. We don't have water plumbed up there yet, so it's something that we may do in the future. I don't know, I might want to keep it just simple. I haven't really thought a lot about that, honestly. We're going to be putting in, and we might even put in our lane of trees this fall. If not this fall, next spring, and we're going to be putting grass underneath that, and I might just want it to be like this really open, kind of serene, peaceful looking entry, and not have flowers all the way out there. Then we don't have to haul fertilizer out there. I don't know, it's a work in progress. Alicia said, I just had a thought. Have you considered putting in a koi fish pond, incorporating a water garden feature? That would be so pretty. And I do agree, that would be pretty. We have thought about it. I did not pencil it into the sketch because we are just kind of toying with the idea right now, but there might be a great big water feature at some point. We'll see. Justin said, what app are you using to do the drawing? So just the Photos app with the markup feature. It's super not, I don't know, it's kind of hard to draw things out in that program, but it just does a very rough job, which is kind of all my goal was. Judy said, are your fruit trees going to be dwarf or full-size trees? Are you going to line your grass walkways with brick or just leave them natural and edge them? This is going to be an amazing journey. Can't wait to see it all done. So the fruit trees we have are semi-dwarf, which means they grow 15 to 20 feet tall and wide, which we'll try to keep on top of the pruning and keep them pruned properly so we get, maximum amount of fruit production, and that'll keep them on the smaller side of things as well. And then I don't know about edging the grass at this point, Erin. I mean, because if we edge the grass pathways with brick, if we're going to be driving the tractor over them to get the tractor in and out, that might collapse the brick edging or mess with it. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. So we'll probably start by just leaving the edges natural and just edging them by hand. and then we may end up putting in permanent edging. And I think not putting in permanent edging from the gate might be a good idea, just in case we need to adjust the lines a little bit. Like, let's say we get the pathways in and we decide like they need to be another foot wider so that we're, you know, this corner is more comfortable to, you know, work around. If we went ahead and did bricks right away, which would look beautiful, it might become an issue in the future. Katie said, you mentioned maple trees along the entrance driveway. Will those be red point maples or a different variety? So they will be a different variety. We have a lot of red point maples already in our current property, and I didn't really want to have a ton of the same thing, especially because we just put, you know, those 4 red points in, the 3 kind of along our parking area in the new property, and then 1 in the far corner. So we are going to go with Autumn Blaze maples, which actually grow a little bit bigger, and we wanted that. We wanted like the hugest size maple we could get our hands on, because we really want to limb them quite far up and create this really beautiful canopy in the end. And the fun part about Autumn Blaze is that the color is fairly long lasting. Like the red points I love because they color up first. Of all my maples, they are colored up first, and they typically lose their leaves all at the same time. So it's a really quick leaf cleanup job, and I think they grow a little bit faster. The Autumn Blaze are a little bit more slow growing. I think the color lasts a little bit longer, even though their color doesn't happen until after the red points. I don't know, they all have like pros and cons to them, and I've always been more of a red point fan than an Autumn Blaze fan, just because I have more experience with red points, and they've done so well. But I just wanted to make sure to pick a tree that I know does really well in our area, and the blazes do really well, just like the red points. So Courtney said, any space for native plants? I would love a video about that. Our native plants are
not pretty.
Yeah, our native plants are like dryland grass and sagebrush, and maybe a juniper here and there. I mean, native here is just, I mean, I could do drought tolerant plants, and that would maybe be along the lines of native for us, but not even. Our native landscape is pretty stark.
Desolate.
It is. It's desert. I mean, we live in high desert. So what we do in our garden is 100% different than if you step outside of our garden. I mean, you saw the pasture before we kind of took it over. It kind of still looks the same. It looks very dry and dusty, but that's kind of what our landscape is like. So native landscape means very different things in different areas of the country. Okay, next video was my 2020 bulb order, and that video was fun to put together because, one, it was 105 degrees outside, so it was kind of perfect to dream about, you know, fall projects when it's cooler out and spring blooms. And so I just went over kind of what I had ordered the previous year and planted and how those things did, because we never ended up putting together a full tour. And I don't think I explained in the video that the reason that we didn't do that is that our weather was so erratic this spring. It got warm really, really early. Things started to come up, and then it got cold, and nothing, like usually we have a couple of weeks where everything is just kind of at its peak. In terms of bulbs, like the early stuff still looks good, and the later stuff is starting to bloom, and that's usually when I like to time a tour so you can see most everything. But everything this year was just all over the board, and there was never a time where like there were multiple things looking good. So we could have put together a tour, but it would have had to be like we would have had to get footage or pictures along the way, and we just didn't have it together enough to do that. So anyway, and then I went over my order from this year and some of my plans there. So Trevor said, so this might be a silly question, what does naturalize mean? I'm new to this gardening thing, so that it's a new term for me. Also, have you ever done a video on how you keep all those indoor plants looking so great? Okay, so naturalizing means that they kind of just spread around, like how perennials kind of seed themselves around or like kind of bulk up and spread a little bit. That's what naturalizing is. So the bulbs will start producing more little bulbs, and those will grow into more mature bulbs, and then you'll have, you know, maybe you've planted 5 tulips somewhere and you've got a really good variety that naturalizes. Eventually those 5 tulips will turn into 10 tulips, and then will turn into 15 tulips. I have Cafe Noirs up in our Versailles garden around our urn, and those have been naturalizing. They've been doing great. Where I planted 1 bulb, there's now like 5 or 7 blooms in that one location for each of the 1 bulb I planted. I love bulbs that do that. In terms of indoor plant care, we've done several indoor plant care videos. I haven't done like a tour, like an all over tour of my houseplants, because honestly it's kind of hit and miss around our house. My outside plants get a whole bunch more attention than my inside plants do. I don't know if I burned myself out on houseplants when I worked at the garden center because I was in charge of them, but I don't enjoy indoor houseplants as much as I enjoy outside plants, not even close. I have them because I love the way they look in a home, but it's not like one of my #1 things to do. I have moods though. Like I'll get way more in the mood to take care of houseplants when it's colder out, and my focus will change, and you'll probably start seeing more videos of indoor plants just because I have more energy to focus on them. Laura said, did I miss a previous mention of moving away from the moon garden on the west side? What will you do with the perennials you have planted there already? Keep them and just add color or move them around? Yeah, so I have mentioned maybe, I don't know, once or twice that I don't think the moon garden is right for the spot I chose for it. And then I started Googling moon gardens, and I didn't find any moon garden that I liked that was in the sun. I think for me, I need to put a moon garden in a smaller, more shaded location where those white blooms can really shine and they're more of a cooling spot. In the full sun here, it's so dry and hot here that a sea of white just looks so dry to me, and I did not anticipate that, like feeling that way about the garden. That's why I'm so happy that I went with a lot of annuals this year, because I was able to kind of get my feet wet, figure out I didn't like it, it didn't feel like me, or it wasn't just right for that area, and now I can pull those annuals and I'll leave the perennials because I love all the perennials that we put in there, and I want white in the garden. I just don't think I want 100% white. So we'll start incorporating a little bit more color probably next year. Melissa said, I have a question, and hopefully you or Erin see it. Do you use any particular tools to plant the bulbs? I need to go back and watch your bulb planting videos. Yes, we use an auger attached to a drill. And we use, like, it depends on the size of the bulb. For the allium, like the Globemaster alliums, we have to use a larger size auger because those are huge bulbs. And then a smaller size one for the tulips and daffodils. But Erin just ordered a couple of augers from Power Planter that are tall, so you don't have to bend over at all when you're using the drill. So typically what we do is there'll be one person on the drill auging holes, and the other person, or like this year we had some help planting bulbs this last fall, which I was thankful for because it took us a couple days even with an extra helper. But there was 2 of us on the ground popping bulbs in holes. So it made the process so much easier because I used to do all of it myself. I used to get up, aug all the holes, get down, you know, do all the bulb planting, and when you do that over and over and over again, it wears you out. But the augers really help out so much. I can't imagine planting bulbs by hand anymore. And the trench method is not a good one for me. I mean, I know a lot of people, they'll like dig up a whole area, lay all their bulbs down, and then recover it with soil. But removing that much soil to create a huge hole like that, it's a mess, and it's heavy. I don't know, and I never have space to do it too. Usually we're planting bulbs in amongst like other perennials, and I don't really have a good opportunity to really excavate an area to the point where I have any place to put the extra dirt while I'm, digging. Anyway, VF said, did you ever do a tour of the containers you planted up with all the tulips? I don't remember seeing them blooming. Did I miss a video? They may have been in a tour. Were they in a tour, Erin? Erin, are you sleeping? Erin's sleeping. Erin, am I boring you? We showed those containers in a tour, didn't we? What smarty pants thing were you about to say to me?
I'm just gonna say your voice puts me to sleep. It's so soothing. I think what it was is that they bloomed at such odd times, and nothing was really that spectacular because it warmed up and then got so cold again for so long. It's like everything woke up and then was like, nope, back to bed.
Yeah, so just like with our other tulip bulbs, you reminded me, I think we might have like passed by them in a tour this spring, but they all grew very erratically like every one of my other bulbs in my garden, and there was never one single time where they all looked amazing. There were a couple of the containers that turned out really pretty, and I enjoyed the heck out of them. I had some Taurus daffodils that I just loved. There were some tulips out there that were really pretty, and then some of them came up kind of weak too, so it was kind of hit and miss a little bit, but I did post a number of pictures on Instagram. I think that's where most of them ended up, and I think on Facebook as well. You plant a lot of tulips and daffodils, but no irises. Would you ever consider planting irises? You know, the reason I haven't planted irises is that there are a ton in our garden already that were here when we moved in. There's a huge drift of them kind of by our large Hebe statue that are beautiful purple. I've posted pictures of them before, and they bloom at the same time that this big beautiful lilac in the same area is blooming, and it's so pretty. We've got jet black irises in the back formal garden and white, so black and white irises, and then there are some yellow ones in there. Then I've got some peachy colored irises behind our gazebo, big drift, and then there's a huge amount of them in our front flower bed, kind of around where I have like this little bench in that area. We've done some videos up there. I think a bunch of hollyhocks come up in that area too, but there are irises all over this garden, and I really do like them. I don't like the way their leaves look about this time of year though. I feel like I want to cut them all back just so I don't have to look at kind of like the burned tips of them, but I do enjoy them in the spring, late spring. It's a very nostalgic smell. I love them. And Diana said, are you planning to have your Garden Answer event next summer if all is clear? In all likelihood, probably not, to be honest, because we're having a baby in January sometime. And so that means around the time that we would normally do our tour, the baby will be 5.5 months old, or if I do my math right, 6 months old. Anyway, we'll still have a pretty brand new baby. And on top on top of our busy spring season, I just think it would be too much. And I have learned throughout the past few years how to better limit myself a little bit and what to say no to. And I'm getting better at saying no to things. Like I used to say yes to, doing presentations and traveling, and I don't really enjoy doing that very much. And so I'm trying to eliminate the things that cause stress and then focus on the things that cause joy. And I think that's so important to try to strike that balance. I don't always attain it, not ever, but I'm like trying to get better at that. So anyway, I think that's really important, especially now that we're going to have 2 kids. I want them to remember a mom that's not stressed out all the time and that is fun and does fun stuff with them and doesn't focus 100% on work, which would be so easy for me to do because I'm driven that way and I always have been that way. So anyway, it's been an interesting journey for me and my personality type. I don't know. Next video is how we keep on top of garden maintenance. So I shared our garden zoning system, how we keep our garden kind of sectioned up to where each section in the garden, for the most part, gets attacked for weeds, deadheading, grass edging, any insect maintenance. Did I say that at least once a week? And that way nothing ever becomes like a full-blown problem. I mean, right now I feel like I can look around and I can find a lot of things to groom, but we keep on top of like the bulk of it. And it's really helped alleviate a lot of stress because what it does is help compartmentalize the work to where when you're setting out to do your garden work for the day, and everybody's garden's different. So like if you were to section your garden up, let's say you have like a normal size city lot, I mean, it might mean that you're working in your garden 15 minutes a day. In our garden, it usually means an hour, maybe a little bit less not every day, 5 days a week is how many zones we have, or 5. But it helps because like on Monday, there's a specific zone and you can just forget about all the other zones, forget about the rest of the garden. Don't let anything else like even creep into your brain. Just focus on the task at hand because you know that the other parts are going to be like they're planned for. You're going to be tackling those. And so it really helps to just focus and limit distraction and keep things enjoyable. Jennifer said, what brand of rake did you use? That's a Fiskars shrub rake. I really like that one. I need a new one because I've broken, did you see I broke one of the tines? I think that was me. It might not have been me that broke it. Oh yeah, Aaron said that you can actually, he thinks you can order just the head of the rake. Which Fiskars has pretty inexpensive tools, but the shipping on a really long tool versus just the head of the rake is probably much different. So I should look into that. Anyway, I love that one because it's small, so I can get it in between plants and it's very flexible. So it doesn't, like the rigid rakes tend to want to damage plants more, and the flexible ones kind of glide over the top of plants. So you can really get in there and get stuff clean easily. Ruth said, oh my gosh, that looks so nice. It's amazing how fresh it looks. You're so brave doing everything with bare hands. Have you ever encountered a snake while doing cleanup? I have actually, but we don't really have poisonous snakes, not in our gardens around here. There are rattlesnakes in the area, but they're in the hills. They're not down here. I've never heard of anybody finding a rattlesnake in their yard, like in town here. Or even in the surrounding area. I'm not even sure that my parents in the country have ever had a rattlesnake. We get bull snakes and little garden snakes, nothing to be afraid of really. So I don't worry about that at all. Spiders don't fritz me out either. I mean, the one in this video started to jump toward my hand. It was a black jumping spider, which I used to carry around when I was a kid. But I wasn't expecting, when they jump at you, I don't really love that. But I don't mind being in their presence. We do have some poisonous spiders around here, but they're usually not hanging out in plants. They're usually like in really dark kind of areas like black widows and things like that. So there's really not, I mean, it's a pretty good area in terms of poisonous things. So, oh, also I should mention that when I was a kid, I wanted to be an entomologist for years. I loved wildlife. I loved insects. I even formed my own bug club, and I had members. I was the president of the bug club. I was the president of the bug club, and I had like 3 or 4 members, and we like had meetings, and then we would go out behind my parents' house and look for insects. Yeah, I even had posters and stuff. So bugs don't really freak me out because I've always had kind of a fascination for them. Kate said, do you have a system for managing irrigation? Like all of your heads on a map? Do you check irrigation heads, tubing on a schedule? We don't do any routine checking or maintenance on drip or any of our grass sprinklers unless we see a problem. And typically, like, we're here doing projects all the time. We don't leave in the summer, spring, summer, and fall. Typically, we don't leave and do anything. We're just kind of here working, and so we can see if a problem's starting to occur. I can tell if something is looking a little bit dry. I mean, Aaron and I will be driving out to go, go to the grocery store or something, and I'll notice something and have him stop the car. Aaron, stop the car. And I'll jump out and I'll run over and like notice that something is kind of suffering. And then we can attack those issues as they arise. But typically we don't have a ton of issues, thankfully. Gardening from Scratch says, how do you guys cut the grass underneath your plants that are spilling over the flower beds? I have always cut my plants either with the weed eater or the mower, and I have to start getting on the ground with scissors. It's such a pain. We've eliminated a lot of the plants that kind of come over our grass. There are, like in that video, those lilies, I need to dig them away from the edge. But back there, I don't even worry so much. And, we just kind of let the grass smother out, as you saw in that project. And we just kind of mow around it. I love the look of plants kind of spilling over and kind of the beautiful softness that creates. But I know it creates a pain for mowing and edging, and Aaron would rather there be really tidy edges, which I like the look of too. So we've been slowly working on that. And I think most of our areas are pretty easy to maintain that way. Next video was planting zinnias, troubleshooting drip, and watering the greenhouse. So in that video was just super simple projects. I planted some zinnia seeds and mountain spinach seeds in 3 of our raised beds in the garden. We had to troubleshoot the drip. That was one of the areas I saw the planter was wilted, and one of the areas we had to address. One of the few. I don't think that there's been another container that's malfunctioned in our garden this year. Anyway, so we figured out that the line was plugged on that, and then we finished off. I needed to water the greenhouse, so kind of gave like a quick spin through there just to show you what was going on. Barbara said the white blocking the tubing was most likely calcium. I'm about to do irrigation for my whole front garden, first time ever, and I learned it from you. Question, is it best to do irrigation in a grid system or looping in rings? When looped, there aren't any auxiliary parts needed like elbows, etc., so it's cheaper. It's absolutely worth the extra money to do the grid system. The distribution of water is so much better. In fact, the flower bed right to my right here, the one right in front of our kitchen flower bed, is one of the last holdouts where I did the whole loop thing. Started at the water access point and I looped all the way until I got to the center. And this flower bed, we deal with more water issues than any other area of our garden. Grid system just has done amazing things. Now in containers, I will just do a little loop of drip in most of the containers that we have, and that works fine because it's such a small scale thing. But when you're doing a larger area, gridding it out is so worth it. Just trust me. Lisa said, no vans today? You're throwing me with the sandals. How did the baby appointment go? Baby appointment went really well. We heard the heartbeat. I found out there's a place in Boise, Idaho that does early ultrasound, so I might go in early to find out the gender of the baby, which we are finding out, and we will share with you guys as well. I'm super excited about that. I am not one that can wait till the very end to be surprised like that. I know that some of you guys are like, oh, it's so magical and special. I think it helps. I think it helps me bond. I know it helps Aaron bond early to know the gender of the baby. Wouldn't you agree, Aaron? Mm-hmm. Like, you can start thinking and dreaming about this, baby boy or girl, and I don't know, I could get into that. But anyway, no vans today because I cut my foot on some pruners. So let me tell you what happened. So I was really kind of irritated at the wind when it knocked all my corn down. This was like last week, I think. And so I was out in the garden space. I was lugging around metal T-posts and 16-foot ranch panels. It was really hot. So I was like cursing the wind. I was cursing the heat, and I was just so sad about my corn, and it was really wet out there. I had some sandals on, not the ones I was wearing in this video, but different sandals. My feet got caked with mud, so I just flung my sandals off, and I was out there pounding in T-posts in bare feet and just trying to get this corn staked back up. and I forgot I had an open pair of Felcos on the ground where I had my twine, and I stepped on them and cut the side of my foot open pretty bad. It's fine now, and I possibly should have gone in for stitches, but I just kind of bound the thing up and went back out and finished the job. But yeah, that was a total noob mistake, and you should wear proper shoes when you garden, and we don't always do that. Anyway, because you're in a hurry and you're kind of just wanting to get the job done, and you're mad at the wind and the flopped over corn and all of that stuff. So anyway, I couldn't get a shoe on for a few days, so I had to wear sandals. Also, I did order a couple new pair of Vans, so you guys won't see my old blown out looking shoes for that much longer. Jessica said, I'm curious what size is the greenhouse. Our greenhouse is 20 feet wide by 36 feet long, and it's been fantastic. It's been such a blessing to have that greenhouse. Tara said, please forgive the possibility of silly question. No silly questions, but what purpose does a greenhouse serve in the summer? I understand desiring warmer protected temperatures in the winter, but doesn't it get extra hot in the summer? How do the plants stay looking nice in the heat? Does the shade cloth just help regulate the temperature, or is there a benefit to reducing the level of sunlight? So there is a benefit to reducing the level of sunlight because it gets so hot and it's crazy dry here. It helps just take the edge off. And when you have little plants in those little 4-inch cans, it is incredibly hard to keep them nice looking and watered, to keep them nice and moist to where they're happy plants. So that helps kind of make the time longer between having to water. Right now, when it gets 100, when it gets over 90 degrees, typically we're watering twice a day. We water in the morning, and then I'll go back out in the evening and double check, and I'll just have to spot water a few things that are a little bit more water hungry. So anyway, the greenhouse is just serving that purpose. It's keeping those littler plants protected from wind, protected from the extremeness of our climate. It does get warm in there though. I've got a fan in there going 24/7, and then I have the doors open in the front and in the back, and the airflow is pretty nice. The sides are also rolled up, so it's just basically like a little roof that's over all the plants. Linny said, my Japanese maple is doing the same thing, must just be the heat. Already pulled mine to a shadier spot. How long should I leave it in that spot? Maybe dappled sun / shade. I think Japanese maples prefer that a lot of the time. They do in our area anyway. We could never put ours in the full sun. They would fry in a second. In fact, they fry if they get too much afternoon sun. So typically for us, a good spot is morning sun if it's going to be full on, and then dappled through the rest of the day. And those, I think they got dried out. They're in fairly small containers, and I think they were missed with water once or twice this season, which will happen occasionally. And then that kind of set them off in the wrong foot, and then it got very hot. So I think they'll be okay, but I needed to move them to the greenhouse just to recuperate. Plus they don't look that great to be out here. So I just am like waiting for them to lose their leaves this fall, and then hopefully they push fresh stuff in the spring. He's making it kind of difficult because I can't like use my pillow table anymore for my tablet. But you're super comfortable, aren't you? Next video was how to clean and sharpen your pruners. And so I had a super dirty pair of Felco 2 pruners. They had rust, they had sap, they had like all the bad stuff on them. It had been a while since I had maintained those, and so I just showed you guys how to take that particular type of pruner apart and clean it. You can still apply some of the same principles to other pruners. I did get some feedback from Felco on kind of my method of cleaning, and we do have some slight differences. They wouldn't recommend, especially if you're not going to take your pruner apart, that you use water to do your cleaning. They would rather use that spray, the lubricating spray that I also used, to kind of help loosen up some of the rust. The only fear is that the pieces and parts wouldn't get dried off completely, but since I was pulling it completely apart, then they were so incredibly dirty and messy. I needed to use water. I needed to soak them in hot soapy water to get everything off of them. Otherwise, I don't know that I'd be able to do as good of a clean job, and I was able to thoroughly dry each piece, and that's the key. I mean, you can use water if you plan on like letting the pieces sit out and dry for a long time, or drying them off yourself, because once you have water enter your pruners, it can be a problem. It can have rust start to form, and that's not good. So Jazzy Marie said, you have such a big property, a younger kid, and pregnant. Do you really keep all of your tools this clean? Because my husband and I have a couple acres to take care of, and we have so many tools and equipment. I couldn't imagine doing this for every tool we have. Typically, I only do that sort of clean once a year in the winter, unless I have something that has gotten particularly bad, like those pruners. Otherwise, if they have a little bit of stuff on them, I leave it, and I just keep using my tool, and then I just do my one big clean in the winter when I don't have anything going on outside, so I have a lot more time. Katie said, does Felco carry replacement parts for all of those pieces that you removed? I feel like it would be really likely for me to lose something in the cleaning process. I believe they do. I think you can get any part for any of the pruners. That's right, isn't it? Yeah, you can get any part, which is one of the reasons I love those pruners so much, is because you can get, instead of having to repurchase a brand new pair, you can just buy a little part for pennies compared to,
It kind of just makes you like the company because of the philosophy.
Yeah, that's true.
We have all of our parts available to purchase, so you always know that you can.
They're not asking you to buy like, oh, you broke it, so now you get to buy a whole new pair.
It makes you think differently about a company that provides everything you need to repair your tools.
Yeah, it does. Lynn said, would you recommend Dawn? It cuts the grease, or should we not use that brand? I used soap in my water. So again, the whole key is to make sure, if you use soap and water, that you dry those pruner parts off completely with no water left over. Davita said, Laura, I have a question. How come WD-40 is not recommended? So I guess in the tool world, WD-40 is known as a tool killer. And I think it's kind of looked at as kind of the same as water, in that, it might help today. You put WD-40 on and it might loosen up your pruners. But if you don't clean out every last bit of it, it can become corrosive. So it's just like water, in that if you do not dry up every little speck of water on your tool, it can create rust and it can bind up your tool. So it's one of those things you probably want to stay away from. You don't necessarily have to use the exact lubricating spray that I used in the video. You could use something like 3-in-1 oil if that's what you can find, and that would be better than WD-40. And the last question for today is from Bahamian Lily. Any chance of you getting a discount code for some of us to buy Felco to make it easier to afford? I do think that's a really good idea. I'll let you know if we ever come up with one of those. But they have a business philosophy that's much like Proven Winners that I very much so respect. And it's one of the reasons I like to work with both of those companies. They will always recommend that you shop your local garden center first, which my parents have a garden center in town. So when a company recommends that, I immediately like that company so much more, because they're supporting people like my parents who work really hard at doing what they do. And so they'll say, go visit your local garden center. You can feel these pruners. You can try out different types of them and decide which one's best for you before purchasing. And I think that that's so great. And they do offer their things online, much same as Proven Winners, as a convenience for those of you who don't have a provider or a business that carries them nearby you. But that's basically it. It's a convenience. Also, I do have to caveat by saying that you can find Felcos on Amazon, but Felco does not sell on Amazon. They're all third-party sellers. If you see a stellar deal on pruners, it's possible it could be a knockoff and they may not be real Felcos. So you just want to be careful of that. And that's it, you guys. That is this week's recap. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great week. See you in the next one. Bye.